Have you ever heard a story that feels like it's been pulled from the fog of a forgotten coastline? The tale that lingers, cold and mysterious, long after you've heard it? Today we're heading to the rugged shores of Maine, to a place where the sea keeps its darkest secrets. This is the story of Evelyn Hart and the Graves Point Lighthouse. It was December 12, 2008. The air was getting sharp, promising a brutal winter night. 31-year-old Evelyn Hart was driving her car along the narrow, winding road that hugs the coast, heading toward Graves Point. It's a lonely stretch of asphalt, with the Atlantic churning on one side and dense, dark woods on the other. The lighthouse stands at the very end of that road, a solitary sentinel against the unforgiving ocean. The last time anyone saw Evelyn was at a gas station, just a few miles from the point. The clock on the wall read 5:47 p.m. She bought a coffee and a single flashlight battery. The cashier, when later asked, remembered her clearly. He described her smile as polite but distant, with a weariness in her eyes that spoke of a heavy heart. A smile that didn't quite reach them. What was weighing on Evelyn's mind as she paid for those small items, preparing for the darkness ahead? To understand Evelyn, you have to understand where she came from. She had only been back in her hometown for 2 months. The reason for her return was a somber one: the passing of her father, Thomas Hart. Thomas wasn't just any resident. He was a local legend. For nearly 3 decades, he had been the keeper of the Graves Point Lighthouse. He was a man of the sea, defined by 2 things: his unwavering discipline and his profound silence. The old-timers in town would tell you stories about Thomas. They said he was part of the lighthouse itself, a fixture as permanent as the stone tower. During the fiercest nor'easters, when everyone else sought shelter, Thomas Hart never left his post. He believed the light was a promise, and he was its keeper. Even after technology made his job obsolete and he officially retired, his connection to the lighthouse remained unbroken. Every single Sunday, without fail, he would make the journey back to the tower, as if checking on an old friend. This particular night, the night Evelyn drove toward her father's lighthouse, the weather was turning foul. It wasn't just a storm, it was a tempest. It's a kind of raw, coastal fury that Maine is famous for. Winds began to howl, reaching speeds of over 60 miles per hour. Colossal waves, black and angry, crashed against the rocky cliffs, sending plumes of spray high into the air. The power grid, unable to withstand the assault, gave out, plunging the entire coastline into an inky blackness. The only light for miles would have been the rhythmic, sweeping beam from Graves Point. At 6:18 p.m., in the midst of this chaos, Evelyn Hart's phone pinged a cell tower for the very last time. The signal's location was precise, chillingly so. It came from the cliff road, the final stretch leading directly to the lighthouse. And then, silence. Her phone went dead. Was the battery gone? Was it damaged or was it turned off? We'll never know. The storm raged through the night. The next morning, as the winds calmed and a pale, watery sun broke through the clouds, the world began to assess the damage. That's when Evelyn's car was discovered. It was parked right at the base of the lighthouse tower, looking strangely serene after the night's violence. The engine was off, the doors were unlocked, the keys were still hanging in the ignition, as if she intended to come right back. Sheriff's deputies arrived on the scene. The car offered no clues, no signs of a struggle, nothing out of place. Their attention then turned to the lighthouse itself. They pushed open the heavy oak door, their calls of Evelyn, echoing up the winding iron staircase, only to be met with the sound of the wind. Inside, the scene was just as perplexing. It was as if time had simply stopped. In the main living chamber, a thick wool blanket was draped over an armchair, positioned to face the sea. Next to it, on a small table, sat a mug of tea, now cold and half empty. But the most significant object was on the desk. It was her father's old logbook, the official record of a lighthouse keeper. The book was open to its final page. The last entry wasn't about weather patterns or passing ships. It was written in Thomas Hart's familiar, steady handwriting. The entry was dated just 2 weeks before his death. It was a message left behind for one person. It read, "If she ever returns, tell her the light never went out." Evelyn had returned, but where did she go? The official search began immediately. Search and rescue teams, aided by local volunteers, scoured every inch of the rugged coastline. They searched the cliffs, the woods, the jagged rocks at the water's edge. The Coast Guard sent out boats to scan the turbulent waters, but they found nothing. Not a footprint, not a piece of clothing, not a single trace of Evelyn Hart. She had driven to the lighthouse and, like a ghost, simply vanished into the storm. The investigation turned up several theories, each more haunting than the last. The most straightforward explanation was a tragic accident. Did she, caught in the storm's fury, venture too close to the cliff's edge and get swept away by a rogue wave?
Oh.
It was certainly possible. The waves that night were monstrous, powerful enough to pull a person into the icy Atlantic in an instant. Her body would likely never be recovered from such violent seas. This theory is clean, logical, and heartbreakingly plausible, but it doesn't quite explain everything. Why leave her keys in the car? Why was the scene inside the lighthouse so peaceful? If she was caught in a storm, why was her father's logbook open to that specific page? This leads to the second theory, one favored by those who look for meaning in the unexplained. Some believe that Evelyn, overwhelmed with grief and returning to the one place that symbolized her father, chose to disappear. Perhaps she walked into the sea, seeking a final connection with the father she had lost and the ocean he had so loved. The open logbook, in this light, becomes a final, poignant farewell. Her father's message that the light never went out could be seen as an invitation, a promise of reunion in some other form. It's a deeply sad thought, but one that offers a kind of poetic, albeit tragic, closure. Then there is the third, more unsettling possibility. Was Evelyn meeting someone at the lighthouse? The remote, storm-swept location would have been the perfect spot for a clandestine meeting to go wrong. The cashier mentioned her smile was distant, her eyes tired. Was she afraid? Was she running from something or to something? The lack of any evidence of a struggle could suggest an abduction by someone she knew, someone she trusted enough to not put up a fight initially. But who? The investigation found no enemies, no secret relationships, no one with a motive to harm her. This theory hangs in the air, a whisper without a voice. Years have passed. The official case file for Evelyn Hart remains open, but it gathers dust on a shelf. She is listed as a missing person, presumed deceased. The Graves Point Lighthouse is now fully automated, its keeper's quarters empty. Tourists sometimes visit the point, taking pictures of the stoic tower, unaware of the mystery that clings to its stones. But the locals remember. They look at the lighthouse, especially on stormy nights, and they think of Evelyn. They think of her father, the silent keeper, and his final message. The story has become a piece of local folklore, a cautionary tale whispered by the sea. What do you think happened on that dark and stormy night? Was it a tragic accident, a deliberate disappearance, or something far more sinister? And the truth, it seems, was swallowed by the storm. And all we are left with is an enduring mystery and a father's final words echoing from the past. If she ever returns, tell her the light never went out. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the fog. If you have your own theories, I'd love to read them in the comments below. And if you enjoy stories that explore the mysteries that lie just beyond our understanding, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more. Stay curious and stay safe. The storm had passed, but its shadow lingered over Graves Point. Detective Laura Keene felt it in the damp, salty air as she stepped out of her car. 2 days since Evelyn Hart vanished. The lighthouse stood defiant against the relentless Atlantic wind, a lonely sentinel with chipped white paint and a beacon that seemed to have surrendered to the gray morning sky. Evelyn's car was still parked near the base of the tower, a silent testament to her last known moments. Inside, everything seemed eerily normal. Her purse was on the passenger seat, her wallet tucked inside. Next to it, a single folded photograph. Keene picked it up carefully. It showed Evelyn and her father, Thomas, the former lighthouse keeper, standing right here, 10 years ago. They were both smiling, but something about it felt off. Evelyn's hand rested on her father's shoulder, but it was stiff, her fingers straight, almost as if she were holding herself back. An uncomfortable smile. Keene made her way into the lighthouse keeper's quarters. The air was thick with the smell of dust and disuse. The keeper's logbook lay open on a small wooden desk. Flipping through the pages, she saw the neat, practiced script of Thomas Hart, chronicling tides, weather patterns, and passing ships. But the last 2 pages were different. The writing was in pencil, shaky and hurried. It wasn't Thomas's handwriting, it was Evelyn's. Leaning closer, Keene read the haunting words aloud to herself. "The light's still on. I heard it last night. Shouldn't have come back." What did she mean? The light. According to official records, the Graves Point Lighthouse had been decommissioned, its light extinguished years ago. The next day brought an even more confusing piece of the puzzle. The crime scene technicians had finished their sweep of the lighthouse. They checked the generator, the power source for the massive lamp. Their report was definitive. The generator hadn't been connected to the main grid since 2007. That was a full year before Thomas Hart had even passed away. It was impossible for the light to have been turned on, yet that's not what people were saying. Keene spent the afternoon down at the harbor, talking to fishermen and locals. Several of them, grizzled men who had spent their lives on the water, swore they saw it. On the night Evelyn disappeared, the night the storm rolled in, they reported seeing a faint, rotating light cutting through the fog from the direction of the old lighthouse. A ghost light. There was one man who might have seen more, Earl Donnelly, an old fisherman who demoored his boat near the cliffs that very night to ride out the worst of the storm. Keene found him mending his nets, his face a road map of wrinkles carved by the sun and sea. "Detective," he greeted her, his voice raspy. "Heard you were asking about the light? You saw it?" Keene asked. He nodded slowly. "Saw the beam swing once or twice through the fog. Just a faint glow, but it was there. Thought they'd finally fixed the old thing. Guess not." Keene pulled out the photograph of Evelyn and her father. "Have you seen this woman?" Earl squinted at the photo, his eyes lingering on it for a moment too long. He hesitated, rubbing his chin. "Yeah. I saw a car like hers up near the tower, just before the storm hit full force." She wasn't alone. Keene felt a chill that had nothing to do with the sea breeze. Who was with her? "There's someone else there," Earl said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. A man looked older. Couldn't see him clearly through the mist, but from the silhouette. "I just thought it was the old keeper, back to check on his light." Keene's blood ran cold. "The keeper?" "Yeah," Earl confirmed, oblivious to the implication. "Thomas Hart." But that was impossible. Thomas Hart had been dead and buried for 8 months. So who was the man at the lighthouse with Evelyn? How could a decommissioned light with no power guide ships that were never meant to see it again? The case was spiraling into something far stranger than a simple disappearance. It was as if the past itself had reached out from the fog to claim Evelyn Hart. Keene drove back to the station, the questions swirling in her mind. The stiff hand in the photograph, the cryptic, terrified entry in the logbook, the phantom light, and the impossible sighting of a dead man. The answer wasn't in police reports or forensic data. The answer was hidden in the history of the lighthouse, in the secrets of the Hart family. Her investigation shifted. She began digging into Thomas Hart's life, and more importantly, his death. It was officially ruled an accident, a fall from the lighthouse gallery during a storm, but the locals whispered other stories. Stories of a man obsessed, a man who believed the light had a will of its own. She found Thomas's personal journals hidden away in a dusty attic at the local historical society. Unlike the official logbook, these pages were filled with rambling, paranoid entries. He wrote about the song of the lens, a low hum he claimed only he could hear. He described the light as a living entity, one that demanded a keeper, a watcher, one that got lonely. In an entry dated just a week before his death, he wrote, "Evelyn doesn't understand. She wants me to leave this place. She calls it a prison of glass and stone. But it's not a prison, it's a covenant. The light chose me, it will not let me go. And it will not forgive those who try to take me from it. A covenant." The words sent a shiver down Keene's spine. She thought back to the photograph, to Evelyn's uncomfortable posture. Was she trying to pull her father away? Was that what this was all about? A daughter trying to save her father from his own obsession, only to be caught in its web years later? Keene realized she wasn't just investigating a disappearance. She was investigating a ghost story, one where the ghost wasn't a person, but the lighthouse itself. The man Earl saw wasn't a man at all. It was a shadow, a memory, a trick of the fog, and a guilty conscience. Or was it? She returned to the lighthouse, this time at dusk. The gray sky was turning a deep, bruised purple. As she stood where Evelyn's car had been parked, she looked up at the lamp room, and then she saw it. A flicker. So faint, she thought she'd imagined it. Then another. A slow, rhythmic pulse of pale light beginning its ghostly rotation out toward the dark, empty sea. The generator was dead. The power was cut, but the light was on. Evelyn's words echoed in her head. I shouldn't have come back. She hadn't come back for her father. She had been called back by the light. The mystery of Graves Point was no longer about finding a missing person. It was about understanding what found her. The lighthouse had a secret, and it seemed it had chosen Evelyn to be its next keeper. Permanently. Keene knew she couldn't put this in an official report. But as she stood there, watching the impossible light sweep across the waves, she knew the truth. Some places don't let go, and some lights never truly go out. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the chilling mystery of Graves Point. What do you think happened to Evelyn Hart? Was it a supernatural force? Or is there a more logical explanation we're missing? Let me know your theories down in the comments. And if you enjoy stories that blur the line between mystery and the unexplained, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content just like this. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video. The morning after Evelyn vanished, I drove out to the old lighthouse. A thick sea fog, cold and heavy, had rolled in from the Atlantic, swallowing the coastline. It felt like stepping into a ghost story. The air was so dense with salt and mist you could almost taste it. When I arrived, the Coast Guard technicians were already swarming the place. They were huddled around the heart of the lighthouse, the old light mechanism. It was a beautiful, tragic mess of corroded gears and salt-worn wires hanging loose like the veins of some ancient creature. The head technician, a quiet, weathered man named Harlan Pierce, met me at the top of the winding stairs. I had that look of someone who had spent his life listening to the sea. He pointed a calloused finger at the control panel. "This thing hasn't worked in years, Detective," he said, his voice low. "Decades maybe, but someone tried to fix it. See that fuse?" He tapped a small glass cylinder, shiny and new amidst the rust. "That's brand new. Someone was here trying to bring it back to life." His words hung in the air. Evelyn. It had to be her. I started a slow, methodical search of the lantern room. In a dark corner, tucked away behind a stack of old tarps, I found it. A small, metal toolbox. The initials TH were stenciled on the lid in faded white paint. Thomas Hayes, her father. My heart sank a little. I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled amongst the worn tools, was a single clean screwdriver. It was still damp, cold to the touch from the previous night's storm. And next to it, a folded piece of paper. It was a maintenance note, written in Evelyn's neat, deliberate handwriting. I unfolded it carefully. It read, "Test run successful. Light rotates at 10-second intervals. Feels right again." Then I saw the timestamp she'd written at the bottom. December 12th, 6:05 p.m. Just minutes before her phone signal had died. A chill that had nothing to do with the sea fog ran down my spine. It was all starting to click into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. Evelyn, consumed by a guilt she could never articulate, had come back. She hadn't been running from something. She had been running to something. To this lighthouse. The one thing that had defined her father. The one thing that symbolized his entire life. She was trying to fix it, to restore his legacy, perhaps as a way to atone for leaving him alone in his final days. It was a pilgrimage of grief. In trying to fix the light, she was trying to fix the past. I stepped out onto the observation deck, the wind whipping at my coat. The metal railing was slick, treacherous with a thin film of salt and ice. My gaze swept along the bars, and then I saw it. A small, dark shape snagged between the metalwork. It was a glove. A single leather glove, identical to the one I'd found in her car. My breath caught in my throat. I crept closer, my own hands suddenly feeling numb and cold. I peered over the edge. Far below, the Atlantic waves crashed against the jagged black rocks with a violent rhythmic roar. It was a relentless, hypnotic sound. The sea was a churning gray monster. I turned and called down to Harlan, who was still examining the machinery. "Harlan, if someone slipped from here, if they fell, would the tide take them out?" I had to shout to be heard over the wind and the surf. He looked up, his expression unreadable. He walked over to the edge and looked down, just as I had. He didn't need to think about it. He just nodded slowly. "By morning, yes," he called back, his voice grave. "The current's here. They're unforgiving. You'd never find them." That night, back in the warmth of my office, the sound of the waves still echoed in my ears. I couldn't shake the image of that single glove, a final, silent farewell. I opened my notebook and wrote down my thoughts, not as a detective, but as a witness to the profound, quiet tragedy of it all. "The sea doesn't hide things out of cruelty," I wrote, "just keeps what falls to it. There would be no body to recover, no final piece of evidence. There was only the story, the guilt, and the vast, indifferent ocean." Evelyn Hayes hadn't been taken. In her own desperate, heartbroken way, she had given herself back to the one thing that had shaped her entire life, the sea. Her final act wasn't one of despair, but of reunion. She had finally gone home. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more mysteries. Your support means the world. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one. The next morning, a pale sun broke through the coastal fog, casting long shadows from the lighthouse. The Coast Guard, after their initial sweep, gave Detective Laura Keene the all clear to begin her formal evidence collection. But instead of jumping straight into dusting for prints or bagging evidence, Laura found herself sinking to the cold wooden floor. She sat near the old keeper's desk, its surface scarred by years of use, a silent witness to a life lived in isolation. The air was thick with the scent of salt, damp wood, and something else: regret. Her colleagues were methodical, their movements precise as they documented the scene. But Laura felt a pull toward the personal, the forgotten. She slid open a drawer of the desk, its groan echoing in the quiet room. Inside, a jumble of rusted tools, faded receipts, and yellowed nautical charts met her gaze. It was a time capsule of a man's solitary existence. As her gloved fingers sifted through the clutter, they brushed against something unexpected: a small cassette recorder, carefully wrapped in a plastic bag to protect it from the damp sea air. A label written in ink now faded to a ghostly blue, read simply, "August Evelyn." Laura's heart gave a slight flutter. Evelyn, the missing woman. This was it. This was the connection she'd been searching for. With a sense of reverence, she took the small device out of its protective wrapping. Her thumb hovered over the play button for a moment, a silent prayer that it would still work. She pressed down. The tiny gears whirred to life. At first, the only sound that filled the room was the familiar low hum of the ocean, the rhythmic crash of waves against the rocks below. It was the soundtrack of this place, the constant companion to anyone who called this lighthouse home. Then a voice emerged from the static, cutting through the sound of the sea. It was a man's voice, tired, deep, and deliberate. Each word seemed to carry the weight of a lifetime. Laura recognized it instantly from old news interviews. Thomas Hart, the lighthouse keeper. "If you're hearing this, Evie," he began, his voice raspy, "you finally came back?" The name Evie hung in the air, a term of endearment that felt achingly out of place in the grim context of a missing person investigation. "I never wanted to keep you here," the voice on the tape continued, a deep sigh following the words. "I only wanted you to remember where the light comes from." Laura leaned closer, straining to catch every nuance. "I couldn't say it right when you were little. I didn't know how to be softer." There was a long pause on the recording. In the background, the distinct howl of wind against the microphone painted a vivid picture of a storm, perhaps one that mirrored the turmoil in Thomas's own heart. He spoke again, his voice filled with a raw, painful honesty. "When the light goes out, the ships turn away. I used to think that's what happened to us. You turned away." Another pause, longer this time. Laura held her breath. "But I know now," he confessed, his voice cracking slightly. "I was the one who made you do it. My darkness. It pushed you away from my light." The tape clicked, a definitive mechanical sound that seemed to signal the end. A final confession from a father to his long-lost daughter. Laura felt a pang of sympathy for the gruff old keeper. He wasn't a monster, was just a man who didn't know how to love without causing pain. Just as Laura reached to stop the player, a new sound broke through the hiss of the empty tape. It was a second voice, much fainter, almost lost in the static, but undeniably there. It was a woman's voice. Evelyn's. "Dad, I fixed it," she said, her tone surprisingly calm, almost peaceful. There was no fear, no distress, only a quiet sense of accomplishment. "The light's working again. You can rest now." A chill ran down Laura's spine. She quickly checked the time stamp on the recorder's small counter. It matched the night Evelyn disappeared, the night the lighthouse beam, dark for years, had suddenly flared to life one last time before going out for good. She wasn't running from him. She wasn't a victim in the traditional sense. She had returned. Laura pressed stop. The silence that followed was profound. Turned and stared out the arched window. The lighthouse stood silent against the gray sky, its powerful beacon now lifeless again. But in that silence, Laura no longer felt the cold dread of a crime scene. Fear was gone, replaced by a wave of understanding, a sudden, powerful clarity. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, not to form a picture of a crime, but a portrait of love, regret, and reconciliation. This wasn't about a disappearance. It was about a promise. It was about a daughter returning to the source of her father's pain, not to succumb to it, but to heal it. She had come back to relight the lamp, to finish the work her father could no longer do, to let his troubled spirit know that the light hadn't gone out forever. Pulling out her official case file, Detective Keene opened it to a fresh page. The official narrative would need to be written, boxes checked, procedures followed, but for her own records, for the truth of what happened in this lonely tower by the sea, she wrote a single, definitive sentence. The daughter didn't come here to die. You came here to finish her father's work. The case of the lighthouse keeper's daughter was closed, not with an arrest, but with an epitaph. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the heart of the lighthouse. If this story moved you, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel for more mysteries that explore the depths of the human heart. Your support means the world. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next story. The storm was over, but Graves Point still wore its scars. The coastline looked like a battlefield, littered with the wreckage of the sea-splintered driftwood, tangled seaweed, and the cruel glitter of broken glass scattered across the rocks. I walked the edge, my flashlight beams slicing through the thick morning fog that clung to everything. The air was heavy with salt and silence. I'm Detective Laura Keene. The case? Evelyn read, the lighthouse keeper, vanished. The Coast Guard had swept the area, their powerful boats churning the gray water. They found nothing. No body, no wreckage from a personal craft, not even a single footprint beyond the lighthouse deck. It was as if the storm had simply erased her. The official theory was straightforward, a tragic accident. Evelyn was known for her dedication, almost an obsession with the light. The storm was a big one, the kind that tests both structures and souls. The brass at the precinct figured she went out to check the lamp during the worst of it, got swept away by a rogue wave, and was lost to the unforgiving Atlantic. Case closed, another casualty of the sea. But something about it didn't sit right with me. I've learned to trust that nagging feeling in my gut, that little voice that whispers when the pieces don't quite fit. So here I was, walking the shoreline myself, hoping to find the one piece the official search had missed. The fog was so dense it felt like I was moving through a dream. The only sounds were the mournful cry of a distant gull and the steady, rhythmic crash of waves against the shore. The lighthouse loomed behind me, a silent gray sentinel shrouded in mist. It was hard to imagine the fury that must have raged here just a night ago. As my light skimmed over a cluster of jagged, dark rocks near the base of the point, a glint of metal caught my eye. I crouched down, my knees protesting against the damp ground. Wedged tightly in a crevice, half hidden by a clump of wet seaweed, was a small metal pendant. I worked it free carefully. It was shaped like a tiny compass, its surface tarnished by the salt water. I wiped it on my sleeve, and my breath caught an engraving, just one word: home. My mind flashed back to Evelyn's apartment in Portland, a place I'd visited just yesterday. It was neat, sparse, the home of someone who didn't spend much time there. But on the mantelpiece, there was a photo. Evelyn smiling, her arm around her younger sister, and around her neck was this exact pendant. The photo was dated just 1 week before she disappeared. Holding it in my gloved hand, the cold metal seemed to absorb the warmth from my skin. This wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a clue. It meant she was out here on these rocks, not just on the lighthouse deck. Why? The deck was dangerous enough. Why come all the way down here, to the water's edge, in the middle of a historic storm? I could almost see her. Evelyn standing right where I was, the wind tearing at her hair, the rain coming down in blinding sheets. The roar of the ocean would have been deafening. What was she doing? Was she holding a light, trying to fix something on the exterior? The official report mentioned the auxiliary power had been spotty. Maybe she was trying a manual repair from the outside. Or maybe it was something else. Maybe she slipped. Or maybe, standing there with the world ending around her, she just didn't care if she did. People who choose to live in isolated places like this carry their own kinds of storms inside them. I pocketed the pendant and made my way back up the winding path to the lighthouse. Inside, the air was still and smelled of ozone and dust. The forensic team was packing up their last bits of equipment. Their faces were impassive, bored. To them, it was just another day, another file to close, an open and shut case of accidental death. On the main table, amidst the neatly stacked evidence bags, lay the preliminary report file. I took out a pen and a small notepad. What could I write? Found a pendant. It wasn't enough to reopen a case. It wasn't proof of foul play. It was just an anomaly, a question mark. Reluctantly, I added my own note to the file, my handwriting feeling stiff and formal. No sign of foul play. Evidence consistent with an accident during storm-related maintenance. The words tasted like a lie. I stepped back outside, into the gray, damp air. The fog was beginning to lift, breaking apart into drifting tendrils. The sun was trying to break through, casting a watery pale light over the scene. I was about to head to my car when something made me stop and look back out at the sea. For just a second, a faint shimmer pulsed across the surface of the water, far out. A brief, distinct flash of light, as if from the lighthouse lens itself. But that was impossible. The main power was out, the tower was dark. The technicians had confirmed it. It must have been a reflection, I told myself. The sun catching a wave in just the right way. A trick of the light in the lifting fog. I stood there, staring at the spot where the light had been, waiting for it to happen again. But there was nothing, just the endless rolling gray of the ocean. My rational mind told me it was a coincidence. But that other voice, the one in my gut, whispered something else. Evelyn was obsessed with that light. She said she'd do anything to keep it shining. A quiet thought formed in my mind, unsettling and strangely comforting at the same time. Maybe she fixed it after all. I whispered the words to myself, the sound swallowed by the vastness of the sea and sky. I pulled the pendant from my pocket, turning it over and over in my palm. The metal felt a little warmer now. As I looked down at it, a sliver of morning sun finally broke free from the clouds. Catching the engraved surface for a fleeting moment, it shone with a brilliant, intense light. Bright, brief, and then it was gone. Just like the flash on the water, just like Evelyn Reed. I closed my hand around the pendant, the edges of the tiny compass pressing into my palm. The case was officially closed. But for me, standing on that wounded shoreline, it felt like it was just beginning. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss a new mystery. We'll see you next time. The fury that had lashed Maine's coast through December finally retreated. Leaving the ocean in a state of exhausted stillness, it lay there, a vast expanse of gray, as if it had finally let out a long-held breath. Detective Laura Keene found herself back at the Graves Point Lighthouse, the salt-laced wind, a familiar, cold companion against her face. This was it. The last visit to officially close the case. The paperwork was all filed, neat and conclusive. The official reports painted a straightforward picture. The lighthouse keeper, Evelyn Hart, had tragically fallen while repairing equipment during one of the fierce storms. No signs of foul play, no lingering questions. A simple, heartbreaking accident. Yet, as Keene stood there, gripping the cold iron of the railing, she couldn't shake a deep-seated feeling that the ocean's profound silence held more than just calm. It felt intentional, like a secret being kept. The case had been on her mind for weeks. Evelyn Hart was a loner, they said. A woman who had inherited the keeper's duties from her father. A man who had been the heart and soul of Graves Point for 40 years. People in the nearby town spoke of him with a quiet reverence, a legendary figure who had never let the light fail, not once. Evelyn, they said, was different. More reserved, more connected to the machinery in the sea than to the people on shore. She had returned to Graves Point after a long time away, seemingly out of nowhere, to take up her father's post shortly after he passed. Keen's investigation had dug into Evelyn's past. An accomplished engineer, she'd worked on advanced navigation systems in Boston. Why leave a successful career to come back to this isolated, windswept rock? The official reason was to honor her father's legacy. But Keen sensed a deeper, more personal motivation. The old logbooks told a story. Evelyn's father had become increasingly frail in his last years. His entries, once so meticulous, grew shaky. He wrote of failing equipment, of a persistent flicker in the great lens that he just couldn't fix. His final entry was a single, desperate line: "The light, it's failing." He had died a week later, his heart giving out. The town believed he died of a broken one, unable to bear the thought of his lighthouse going dark. And then Evelyn had arrived. The logbook entries changed overnight. They became technical, precise, filled with diagrams and calculations. She was methodically dismantling and rebuilding the entire lighting apparatus. It wasn't just maintenance, it was a complete overhaul, an obsession. She was fighting the same battle her father had lost, but with a new set of skills. The townsfolk saw a recluse. Keen saw a daughter on a mission. Keen reached into her coat pocket, her fingers closing around the small, cool object they'd found nestled among the jagged rocks below the tower, not far from where Evelyn's body was recovered. It was a simple brass compass pendant, tarnished by the sea. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a key. An inscription on the back, barely legible, read, "So you always find your way home." Dad? It was a gift from her father. She had carried it with her all those years in the city, a link to the home she had left behind, and she had brought it back with her. Turning the pendant over and over in her palm, Keen looked up at the silent, imposing structure. The gray sky pressed down, heavy and thick. She whispered her thoughts into the wind, a quiet acknowledgement of the truth she felt in her bones. "You finished what he couldn't, didn't you? You fixed it." It wasn't a question for a ghost, but a statement of fact, a tribute to the woman she'd come to understand. The reports called it an accidental fall during repairs, but Keen knew. Evelyn had finished the work. In the middle of that final, raging storm, she had restored the light. Her fall wasn't a failure, it was the cost of her success. As if in response, a strange and beautiful thing happened. A sliver of blue opened in the oppressive clouds, a crack in the gray armor of the sky. A single determined ray of sunlight pierced through, striking the very top of the lighthouse. For one breathtaking moment, the newly polished Fresnel lens caught the beam. It ignited, throwing a brilliant, powerful arc of light across the misty era's single, silent rotation. And then, just as quickly, the clouds closed, the light vanished, and the world returned to its somber gray. A faint smile touched Keen's lips. It wasn't a haunting, it wasn't a supernatural sign. To her, it was something more real, more profound. It was the last echo. It's the final tangible reverberation of a woman's love and determination. A daughter who had returned not just to a place, but to a purpose to fix what time and where had broken. To restore her father's honor, and in doing so, find her own peace. Back in Portland, a new name was carefully engraved on the Maritime Memorial Wall, right beside that of her father, Elias Hart. The inscription for Evelyn Hart was simple, yet it held the weight of the entire story. The light never went out. That night, and for many nights after. The old-timers and fishermen living along the rugged coast of Graves Point would sometimes swear they saw it. A brief, inexplicable flash on the distant horizon. Not a flicker, but a steady, deliberate beam, cutting through the darkness for just a moment before disappearing. No one spoke of ghosts or spirits. They didn't need to. When they saw the flash, they spoke of love. They spoke of legacy. They spoke of a daughter who, after a lifetime of searching, had finally brought the light home. Thank you so much for joining me on this story today. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more tales from the quiet corners of the world. It really helps us keep these stories alive. Till next time, stay curious.